For my own safety and the safety of my family, some names and locations in this story have been changed. But what I'm about to tell you is real. Every risk, every betrayal, every moment of sheer terror, it all happened. And if you think prison breaks are just for movies, let me tell you, sometimes reality is far more brutal. I never planned to be a fugitive. I never planned to spend 5 years of my life behind the walls of the most violent prison in Brazil. But life doesn't care about plans. One day, you're free. The next, you're staring through iron bars, wondering if you'll make it to sunrise. My name? Doesn't matter. What matters is why I was there. I wasn't a killer. I wasn't a gang member. I wasn't even a criminal. I was a pilot. For years, I flew small cargo planes across the Amazon, the Pantanal, the Northeast Coast, places where the law didn't always reach. I worked for a private transport company, mostly legal, but occasionally, I'd take a no-questions-asked job. I told myself it wasn't my problem, that I was just flying supplies, not drugs, not guns, just cargo. But the feds don't care about details. When they raided the airstrip, they didn't ask what was in the crates. They didn't ask if I knew who I was flying for. They just saw me standing next to a plane loaded with $5 million worth of cocaine. And that was it. They dragged me out of the cockpit, beat me half to death on the tarmac, and threw me in a cell before I could even process what had happened. I barely made it to trial. The judge didn't waste time. 20 years. No parole. No second chance. They sent me to a prison so violent, so corrupt, that even the guards walked in pairs. I wasn't supposed to make it out. Not alive, anyway. Prison in Brazil is different. Forget what you've seen in Hollywood. There are no clean uniforms, no orderly lines, no controlled environments. Here, the gangs run everything. The guards only control the gates. Inside, it's a war zone. If you don't belong to a faction, you don't survive. And me? I belong to no one. The first week, they threw me into a cell with 6 other men. Concrete walls covered in mold, a hole in the corner for a toilet, a single flickering light bulb. No beds. No privacy. Just bodies packed together like animals. Fights broke out every night. Some over food. Some over power. Some just because someone needed to hurt someone. The first time a guy pulled a shank on me, I was still naive enough to think someone would stop it. No one did. If I hadn't grabbed his wrist, slammed his head against the wall, and beaten him unconscious, I wouldn't be telling you this story. After that, they left me alone. Not because they respected me, because they were watching, seeing where I'd fall, seeing if I'd choose a side. There are 3 rules in prison. If you're alone, you're dead. If you owe, you're owned. If you cross the wrong man, you disappear. I wasn't stupid. I knew I needed protection, but I wouldn't become a soldier for the gangs. I found another way. See, the one thing this place lacked? Pilots. And when high-ranking gang leaders need to move money, drugs, or people out of the country, they don't trust just anyone. That's how I survived. I made myself valuable. I kept my head down, my ears open, and my hands clean. For 3 years, I played the game. And then, everything changed. One night, a guard came to my cell. "You've got a visitor." That was strange. I had no family left, no lawyer. But when they took me to the meeting room, I nearly lost my breath. It was my old boss, the owner of the company I had worked for before prison. He sat across from me, a cold smile on his face. "You should have kept your mouth shut." That's when I realized. He had set me up. The drugs on that plane? They were his. I was never supposed to get caught. But when things went bad, he needed a scapegoat. And now, he needed to make sure I didn't leave this prison alive. I walked back to my cell with a target on my back. I had only one choice left. I had to escape. The next morning, I started watching. I had 2 things in my favor. My connections. I had made friends with the right people. My knowledge of transport routes. I had flown over every border in South America. I studied the prison layout, the guard rotations, the blind spots in the cameras. And then, I got lucky. A tunnel. Not from the outside. From inside. The gangs had been digging for months, planning an escape of their own. And I was going to use it. But there was one problem. The tunnel was almost finished, but not big enough to use yet. And in 2 weeks, my name was on a kill list. I didn't have months. I had days. And if I didn't get out before then, they'd be digging a grave for me instead. In prison, time works differently. A week can feel like a year. A second can decide if you live or die. And for me, I had days. Days before someone put a knife in my ribs. Days before, I was just another body buried in a shallow grave outside the prison walls. If I was going to escape, it had to be fast, precise, perfect. Because in this place, one mistake is all it takes to disappear forever. I couldn't do this alone. No one escapes a Brazilian prison without help. I needed people who could. Get me into the tunnel. Keep the guards distracted. Make sure I wasn't stabbed before I even got there. But trust? Trust was a luxury in this place. And I was about to gamble my life on it. The tunnel wasn't my idea. It belonged to a gang called the Red Command, one of the most powerful factions in Brazil. They had been digging for months, smuggling tools in through corrupt guards and hiding the dirt inside mattresses. But the escape was only for their own people, which meant if I wanted in, I had to convince them I was worth it. So, I arranged a meeting with Felipe, one of the gang's lieutenants inside the prison. Felipe was young, sharp, dangerous, a man who had climbed the ranks fast. He controlled who got in and who stayed behind. We sat across from each other in a dark corner of the yard, surrounded by men who wouldn't hesitate to kill me if I said the wrong thing. "Why should we let you escape with us?" he asked, tapping a knife against his boot. I leaned in. "Because I know the routes. I know the skies. And when you're out there, you're going to need someone who can get you across the border without being caught." Felipe smiled. And I knew I had him. Getting into the tunnel was only half the battle. I still had a kill order on my head, which meant if I wanted to make it to escape night, I needed protection. So, I went to the only man who could guarantee that. Bruno. Bruno wasn't just an inmate. He was the boss of the prison's black market, a man who could get you anything for the right price. Cigarettes, weapons, guards willing to look the other way. And, in my case, a temporary death sentence. I handed him everything I had, money, favors, connections, and in return, he made sure word got out that I was already dead, that someone had killed me in another block during a fight. For 2 days, I was a ghost. No one looked for me. No one came after me. And by the time they realized I was still breathing, I'd already be gone. Felipe gave me the details. The tunnel would be finished in 4 nights. It led under the walls, past the perimeter fences, coming out in a drainage ditch near a sugarcane field. From there, we'd have 10 minutes, maybe less, before the guards noticed we were missing. We needed clothes. Prison uniforms would make us obvious targets. A getaway vehicle. The field stretched for miles. If we ran, we'd be caught. A backup plan, because something always goes wrong. And that's when the first problem hit. One of the men digging the tunnel got careless. A guard found dirt in the wrong place. The next morning, they searched the cells. I stood there, watching my mattress being ripped apart, my heart pounding as they tore through every crack and crevice of the cell block. If they found the tunnel now, it was over. Not just for me, for everyone involved. The guards were one step away from the right spot. Then, an explosion rocked the other side of the prison. The sound shook the walls, screams erupting in the distance. I knew what it was. A distraction. Felipe had planned it, a fake fight in another block, just enough to draw the guards away. It worked. Within minutes, they were rushing toward the chaos. And the tunnel? Still hidden. But barely. We had to move sooner. Felipe came to me that night, his face tense. "Forget 4 days. We go tomorrow." Tomorrow. 24 hours. I barely had time to prepare. We gathered stolen clothes, stuffing them under a loose floor tile. We bribed a guard, making sure the gate closest to the sugarcane fields would be unlocked. We arranged a ride. A man Felipe trusted would be waiting in a stolen truck, hidden just beyond the field. And then, we slept. Or at least tried. Because tomorrow, we were either escaping or dying. And I wasn't sure which one was more likely. In prison, there are 2 kinds of silence. The kind that means everything is normal, and the kind that means something is about to happen. That night, it was the second kind. The escape was set for 2 a.m. We had 1 hour left. I sat in my cell, heart pounding, staring at the thin crack in the wall where the moonlight leaked through. Felipe had already moved his men into position. Bruno had paid off the right guards to turn their backs. The tunnel was ready. All we had to do was wait for the signal. And then, a single metallic tap echoed from the pipes beneath the prison. It was time. One by one, we slipped out of our cells, moving through the shadows, every step careful, every breath controlled. Felipe led the way, guiding us toward the abandoned storage room near the back of the prison. Inside, the trapdoor was already open, revealing the mouth of the tunnel. The stench of damp earth and sweat hit me instantly. The tunnel was tight, barely wide enough for a grown man. And once we were inside, there was no turning back. I dropped down first, landing on cold dirt, my fingers pressing into the packed soil. Felipe followed. Then 2 more men. We crawled in complete darkness, the air thick and suffocating, the walls pressing so close I could feel the weight of the prison above us. The tunnel was longer than I expected. Each movement sent dust into my lungs. I could hear the man behind me wheezing, panic creeping into his breath. Then, a sudden cracking noise. The dirt shifted above us. The tunnel was collapsing. Move. Move now, Felipe hissed. I scrambled forward, the ground shifting behind me. A choking cough. Someone was buried alive back there. But we couldn't go back. If we stopped, we'd be next. So we kept going. Crawling, clawing, praying. Until, cool air. I looked up, blinking against the sudden moonlight. We were out. We emerged in a drainage ditch, the damp grass cold against my skin. Above us, the prison stood like a fortress, its searchlights still scanning the yard. They hadn't noticed yet. We were still ghosts. Felipe motioned for us to move. The sugarcane fields stretched out before us, tall, thick, the perfect cover. We ran without looking back, our bodies low, our breathing ragged. We had 10 minutes to reach the truck. And then, a siren split the air. Someone had found the tunnel. The chase was on. We sprinted, the sugarcane whipping against our faces, our feet sinking into the mud. Dogs. We could hear them in the distance, barking, getting closer. The truck was waiting just beyond the next ridge. We pushed forward. Then, a gunshot. The man behind me stumbled, his body hitting the dirt hard. Felipe didn't stop. Neither did I. There was no saving him. We kept running, the lights behind us growing brighter. Another shot. Closer. Then, the truck. The driver, a local contact Felipe had paid off, was already revving the engine, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. We threw ourselves into the back, mud covering our faces, lungs burning. The second the doors slammed shut, the truck lurched forward. We peeled onto the dirt road, kicking up dust, the headlights cutting through the dark. Behind us, chaos, prison guards, sirens, dogs. But they were too late. We were gone. We drove for hours, the jungle swallowing us whole, the roads getting smaller, rougher, until there was nothing but trees and silence. No sirens, no lights, no voices, just the sound of the rain hitting the roof of the truck. Felipe exhaled, running a hand over his face. We did it. I didn't answer, because I knew the truth. This wasn't over. Not yet. We were still in Brazil, still being hunted, and if we wanted to survive, we had to disappear. Forever. The first few hours after an escape are the most dangerous. The entire country was waking up to the news. Every road, every border, every bus station, they'd all be crawling with police soon. If we didn't vanish fast, we were dead men walking. The truck bounced down a muddy back road, the tires struggling against the deep ruts. Felipe sat beside me in the back, breathing hard, his clothes soaked in sweat and dirt. The driver, Jorge, didn't say much. He just kept his eyes on the road, hands tight on the wheel. None of us spoke for a while. We didn't need to. We knew what came next. By the time we reached the outskirts of a small jungle town, the sun was rising. The truck was too hot to keep. Jorge pulled off onto an abandoned sugarcane field, cutting the engine. "This is as far as I go," he muttered. Felipe nodded, tossing him a fat stack of cash, a final payment for his silence. Jorge didn't wait around. He reversed down the path, disappearing into the trees. No, we were on foot. Felipe led us through the jungle toward a rundown house on the edge of town. Inside, an old woman sat behind a wooden table, lighting a cigarette. She barely looked at us before pushing a bundle of clothes and supplies across the table. We changed fast. No more prison uniforms. Now, we looked like farm workers, dirty jeans, old shirts, worn-out boots. Felipe tossed our old clothes into a metal drum, lighting them on fire. "We don't exist anymore," he muttered as the flames swallowed the last evidence of who we were. We walked into town like we belonged there. No running, no looking over our shoulders. Just 2 tired workers heading home after a long shift. The trick was to keep moving. We needed transport fast. A bus station sat near the market square. That was our way out. As we got closer to the station, something felt wrong. Felipe grabbed my arm, muttering under his breath, "Don't turn around." I kept my eyes ahead. Then I saw them. 3 military police officers, standing near the station entrance, talking into radios. The manhunt had already reached here. We were out of time. We're not taking the bus, I whispered. Felipe's jaw clenched. Then how'd we get out? I scanned the street. And that's when I saw it. A cargo barge. Slow. Dangerous. Unpredictable. But heading downriver toward the border. It was our best shot. Or our last mistake. The dock workers were busy loading crates onto the barge. We kept our heads down and grabbed a sack of bananas, blending in with the other laborers. No one questioned us. Nobody cared. To them, we were just 2 more nameless men, trying to make a living. But if anyone recognized us, we wouldn't leave this dock alive. The barge rumbled to life, pushing off the dock, heading downriver toward the border. I leaned against a crate, exhaling for the first time in hours. We had done it. We had disappeared. Or so I thought. Because then, Felipe grabbed my shoulder, his face pale. I followed his gaze. Across the river, on the next dock over. Police. And they were boarding another boat, heading the same way we were. The chase wasn't over. Not yet. The river was supposed to be our way out. No? It was a trap. The police were boarding another boat, moving fast, their radios crackling. If they boarded our barge, it was over. No running. No hiding. Just prison. Or a bullet. Felipe's fingers tightened around my arm. We have to get off this boat. Now. The barge was huge, but it wasn't built for hiding. Crates of bananas, coffee, and rice filled the deck, but the workers moved between them, shifting cargo, tying down ropes. If we just stuck behind something, someone would see us. The police boat was gaining on us, cutting through the water with purpose. I scanned the deck. Then I saw it. A lifeboat. Small. Old. Tied to the side of the barge. There, I whispered to Felipe. His eyes followed mine. He nodded. We moved fast, slipping behind the cargo, keeping our heads down as the barge rumbled forward. The wind kicked up, the river choppy from the storm the night before. Perfect. It would make our jump less obvious. We reached the lifeboat, untying the ropes as fast as we could. The police boat was just meters away now, close enough that I could hear their radios buzzing. All cargo vessels must stop for inspection. Felipe's hands moved fast, working the last knot free. Then, the lifeboat lurched, rocking in the water. For one terrifying second, I thought it would capsize right there. Get in, now. I hissed. We jumped in, gripping the sides as the current pulled us away from the barge. The moment we hit the water, I heard the whistle blow. They had boarded the barge, but we were already drifting into the current. Out of sight. Out of reach. The river carried us fast, twisting and turning through dense jungle. We paddled low and slow, letting the current do most of the work. Every sound made my heart pound, a branch snapping, a bird taking flight, the distant hum of motors. Were they still looking for us? Were they ahead of us? There was no way to know. Felipe checked the map we had stolen from the dock. If we stay on this river, we'll reach the border by nightfall. That was the plan. But nothing ever goes according to plan. By sunset, we saw it. The border checkpoint. A cluster of wooden docks, patrolled by federal police, with boats anchored nearby. We couldn't just drift past it. We needed a way to get through without being seen. Then Felipe pointed. A larger boat was pulling away from the checkpoint. A barge carrying logging equipment. That's our cover, he said. We paddled toward it, keeping low. The logs were stacked high, casting long shadows over the water. We slipped behind them, letting the boat tow us forward. The checkpoint grew closer. We held our breath. A searchlight swept the river. The logs creaked. The boat drifted forward. The searchlight passed right over us. Then, we were through. We paddled until we couldn't see the border anymore. Until the jungle swallowed the last sign of civilization. Then, finally, we let ourselves breathe. Felipe leaned back, staring at the night sky. We made it, he whispered. I didn't answer. Because I knew the truth. We had escaped. But we would never be free. Not really. Not as long as they were still looking. We had disappeared into the jungle. And from now on, we'd have to stay ghosts. Forever.